country's ministers, and we reflect on that significant period, kicking off with the formal business of the 7th administration. And we start with Minister Ndabeni-Abrahams, who leads the Small Business Development Department. Minister, good morning. Thank you very much for being with us. Really appreciate your time. So we're marking the 100 days, but you have been in this role for 3 years now. How are you feeling about what's to come?
I'm feeling excited because this is the time we get to implement. Of course, when we got into the department, as you will be aware, that the department is only 10 years this year. Therefore, we're still in the building or the foundational phase. Now we've put certain instruments in place, which amongst them is the legal instruments that give the department an authority to make interventions in certain areas. And therefore, now we're beginning to put those instruments in place. So it's an exciting time for us.
I'm probably going to come back to that one because I think it's going to be important with regard to developments in Naledi. Do you think after these last 3 years, and especially over the last 100 days of the 7th administration, under your leadership, that your department has a thorough understanding of the sector and what you're actually trying to fix?
Well, I do believe that we have a thorough understanding of the different sectors that we are dealing with, because the thing about being involved with small business development, you cut across everyone, which means one of the interventions we needed to make was to make sure that we get sector specialists, because we can't provide interventions that are cutting across, because even the segments that we are responsible for, they are different in terms of the needs that they require. So we appointed sector specialists who are now at least trying to find themselves, and they are really trying to assist us to make sure that the interventions that we are making will be impactful interventions. One of the approaches we decided to shy away from is to do things for media. You know, those things that don't last, we just go for project-based.
Like what?
Project-based, like there's an event and then that's it. There's an event, it's a once-off, there's no impact. But we opted for sustainable interventions, which means we must put those back in terms of the policy intervention and the legislation that we're talking about. Those you can be able to track, although you can't track them immediately. That's the thing about policy. But to lay the foundation to say, if there's a wrong that is being done, let me be able to intervene legally, because people of this country understand their rights, and therefore you may be making an intervention. For example, what is happening with the complaints that people have in relation to the foreign ownership of certain businesses, whether you talk about salons or spa shops, people are complaining. But as things stand, the department does not have authority to intervene in that space, which is why it's important to look at all those challenges that you're faced with and empower yourself so that when they take you to court, you don't lose like we had lost previously.
But there is a directive in place, isn't there, when it comes to spa shops and being registered? Which is part of which also falls under your purview and your ambit?
That directive we lost in court. We issued a directive indeed, then some South Africans took us to court and we lost it, which is why now we're in the process of amending the business licensing so that we can empower the department legally to be able to make those interventions. As things stand, that responsibility is given to municipality by the Businesses Act. It's only municipalities that can issue licenses, that can do anything that relates to permits, but not the department, which is why I was explaining that we just turned 10 years, which means we've got to make sure that we have our founding legislation and the powers, therefore, that we can be able to. Already we've started, as I said. We are working on the business licensing policy and the bill that will be introducing to Parliament.
All right. So I'm just trying to clarify, because we heard from Minister in the Presidency, Ndabeni, earlier this week, that it is the Department of Small Business Development that should be ensuring that the work is done with municipalities to ensure that spa shops are registered. So what is the real picture here? Who is supposed to do that?
The minister is correct, but to issue directives is the power we do not have, which is why the minister further said we did issue directives, but we were challenged in court because we don't have a legal document that mandates us to do so. So the current legal document gives that power to municipalities, but because the department is established now, we then say, let us formulate certain structures that must assist the municipalities to be able to undertake this work whilst you are amending the legislations. That is why we have set up the intergovernmental provincial clusters that that are led in the department in order to say, in licensing, this is what you must look for, guiding them in order to make sure that those interventions, they influence their local economic development policies.
Right. So what is in place then right now to ensure that there is there is a streamlining, there's accountability, there's oversight, there's management in the way that spaza shops are licensed and allowed to operate? And what is your role in that as of this moment?
As of this moment, as I said, it's only a coordinating role that I have, which is what I spoke about in terms of establishing the intergovernmental provincial.
All right. So you're just a coordinator at this stage?
Because the law does not empower us.
Okay. I think what's important for us is, as you solve the issue around SMEs, it's understanding what is in the space, what do they look like, what is the anatomy of SMEs, what is their contribution to GDP. And I'd like to hear from you what your understanding is or what numbers you can share with us, because there are different schools of thinking around the impact of SMEs. Is the contribution in 2024 or the latest figure of SMEs to GDP?
Well, as things stand, because we don't have 2024 numbers, we're still in the third quarter.
Yeah. I meant the latest. I meant the latest in respect of the current state of play. I know you won't have your 2024 financial numbers, understandably.
As things stand, different firms that have given us the stats. Of course, our source document will be Stats SA, which will tell you that we have around 2.5 million SMMEs that are contributing massively, differently as the different segments. They will tell you that in the spaza shop, we're earning more than 30 billion rands a year. They will tell you that in the hair industry, we're earning more than, again, 50 billion rands. So it's the different segments. But if you notice, what they are saying is that the economy is mainly driven at a small business level. But South Africa is not yet there to get the rewards that it's supposed to get.
What is the percentage then? I mean, if you think about contribution to GDP, how much are small business as a collective contributing? What percentage
we are less than
of GDP?
30% currently.
Less than 30%.
Yes.
But that's a huge amount. I mean, that's a huge impact, right?
It could be better than that if we're putting all the instruments in place. If you look at other countries, mainly the GDP is driven by SMMEs, if you look at other countries, which is what we are trying to address as South Africa. To say there could be more, for example, as we're talking about the economic growth, we believe that we can add 2% if we are to provide all the necessary support. We can add 2% growth by 2030 as SMM is only, not any other intervention from other sectors.
So let's break it down. As you say, I mean, we do tend to lump all of them together, all the SMEs, but they're involved in very specific and different types of sectors. So talk to us about where most of them are operating and which ones are winning and which ones are struggling.
Most of them are at an informal level, and they are the ones that seem to be doing well, although now the challenge is the issue that we were talking about earlier, that the informal trading space has been invaded by lots of illegal foreigners, which has a huge impact on what we want to see in terms of growing the economy. But the second aspect that is doing well in manufacturing, we are doing very well in the agricultural space. There's lots of good work that is being done in that space, and we are trying to invest mainly on those. The tech industry is also coming up, although we have not yet seen the much results that we want to see, which is why we're making specific interventions now in this administration to say, include even us from our side, let's have a dedicated funding that goes to the tech startups, because it's not only about them starting, it's about them being able to stay on the game.
Is that in play already? Is that tech startup fund, is it?
We do have it, the Innovation Fund, yes.
The Innovation, is this the Innovation Agency or the Innovation Fund?
It's the Innovation Fund under CIFA.
Under CIFA.
Yes.
And this is, I mean, this is the vehicle that you announced. I think it was about a year ago or so.
It was about a year ago. It was going with the Youth Challenge Fund. And this Innovation Fund is done between ourselves and the Department of Science and Innovation.
Let's talk about what you just said, that the space has been invaded by illegal business. Just share with us explain a little more on what that means from your perspective.
What that means is that if you go to 10 salons, you are guaranteed to get 8 of them being run by foreigners, whether legally or illegally. But as I talk about legally, whether they are here legally. But if you go back to the Migration Act, it will tell you that the only people, if they are not South African, that are supposed to be doing business is people who have invested in businesses that are at least 5 million and above. Anything less than 5 million above, you cannot get a business visa. Because if you are a non-South African, it means you must apply for a visa for you to trade. That's the first aspect. If you go to the spaza shop, the retail industry, it is also dominated by foreigners, which is why we are working with the Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition to say, let's review our trade agreements, because we're finding lots of these products that are then taking our own businesses away. They're taking space in the craft center, they're taking space in the spaza retail center, as I said. But now what we're trying to do is to say, there were agreements that we found in place. How do we review these agreements? Because we are looking at the impact of these products in our own economy. As we have said, what we want to do is to build an inclusive economy. It has to look at all aspects in terms of what is it that we allow in South Africa, what is it that we don't allow, and what are the instruments to assist those that are already in business.
I think as you're speaking, I mean, and again, I'm just thinking about Naledi. We have a reporter there today, and the Consumer Goods Commission is there, and they're doing a clampdown and inspections. If, as you say, it seems to be, and to use your word, invaded by illegal foreigners, and in any case, in any business that is supposed to be competitive, it should be, I guess, a scarce skills business that then gets run by a foreigner, even if they are legal in South Africa. Why is the picture as bad as you painted? Where has the enforcement been? Who's dropping the ball here? If, as you say, this is not an area you can be that you as a department can be directly involved in.
There's different stakeholders that are responsible for the work that we're talking about. For example, who allows South Africans to come in will be the Department of Home Affairs. So whether you entered the borders legally or illegally, that's another responsibility of another department. Secondly, for you to be licensed, if you are to run a business, that's the responsibility of the municipality. Now there's inspections in terms of the workers or the people that are occupying those businesses. That's the responsibility of the Department of Labor and Employment. You have seen the minister who's just been appointed. She's been doing those visits to say, you are not supposed to be here. Therefore, your business, this is the quota, according to the quotas that they set of how many foreigners you can have in a business, whether legally or, of course, illegal is not even considered. But now, as you do all of those, you have the district municipalities and the metros, which by law are the ones that are empowered to do the inspections in terms of what kind of products that are in the stores.
And your department doesn't play a role in inspections at all? That's not your...
Not at all.
That's not your ambit?
Not at all.
Okay. Minister, well, thank you. I guess, as you say, there's funding available for small business. There's a focus on technology. You're looking at tightening up the laws insofar as who can play and register businesses in the formal and the informal economy as a small business. We'll keep watching your space, and we'll have you back again, perhaps in the next 100 days, to reflect particularly on some of the areas that you say might be standing in the way, and this is around policy and legal intervention. Thank you very much for your time this morning. Appreciate talking to you. This is the Small Business Development Minister, Ndabeni-Abrahams.